The backstory is what makes your D&D character truly, well, yours. It is what differentiates your barbarian from your friend's barbarian, and it is what kind of allows you to connect to that person, that individual at the table, and fill their shoes and role play them to your heart's content. Today, we're going to take a look at the backstory and the personality aspects of creating a character as our third part on creating characters, a deep dive discussion. With me today, I have Martin.
Yo.
And Philip.
It is me.
And my name is Anton. And thank you for joining us, and I hope you will enjoy. To start off, I was going to connect back a little bit to the previous videos that we've done, and if you haven't watched them already, I will strongly recommend that you do, because non-biased opinion, they're quite good. But I always find the kind of combination of mechanics and role-playing to be interesting, because it is a role-playing game. It has both game mechanics and it has more free-form role-playing aspects. So I was going to ask the both of you, how do you use the most sort of backstory integrated mechanic in the game, in character creation, I should say, namely backgrounds, when you consider making your characters? Do you use them as they are written in the player's handbook, or do you think about them in some other way?
Well, I think I usually have a picture of how I want my character to be before I reach the background section while creating a character. Like, I know if I want to play a thief or a city guard or any other kind of adventure. So I usually look up the existing background that seems to fit the most to what I want my character to be. And I am not following the rules and suggestions there very strictly, but I look to them for inspiration, and I think they can be a great help for that. Yeah, like
in terms of, like, personality and flaws and whatnot.
Exactly, like the thief example. Oh, I know I want to play a thief. I will take the criminal background, and there I see one of the suggested flaws are like you have a hard time staying away from liquor and the pleasures, the carnal pleasures of life. And I'm like, yeah, that might be a good addition. Like, I think I go to the backgrounds for that kind of thing.
Yeah. How about you, Philip?
For me, it's kind of similar. Usually, I already have a picture of how I want them to be, and then find a background that sounds suitable. The flaws and the personality traits I rarely actually use. I have them as inspiration in the beginning, but after playing for a couple of sessions, I don't really remember what they are anymore, because I've already kind of created the character. I play more around the actual backstory, like what does this character have been through that would make them react in a certain way in different situations. One time when I didn't fit the background perfectly with the character or the class was the one time when I played the life cleric, because I made that a little bit in a hurry after you know what happened.
Yep.
The character died mid-session. I had to make a new one. But then I realized when I came to the background section of the book, I saw the criminal background. I was like, yeah, sure, criminal. He's gonna be a life cleric with a criminal background, and that gave me the backstory idea that he was a criminal first, but somehow kind of got saved by a clergy, and went on a path of redemption through being a cleric.
Yeah, and that's very similar to the way I like to use backgrounds as well, kind of trying to, and what you're both saying and what I do is quite similar. It's mostly like looking at the backgrounds for inspiration, right? And then building off of them. with the personality traits they're great suggestions for perhaps if you're making your first character, or if you're making a one-shot or pre-generated characters for players that want to try the game. They're great, but as you keep playing a character, they tend to take on a life of their own. So I like to think of them as more inspiration, just like you say.
Yeah.
Uh,
Or like start out points. And I
yeah,
think, especially if you're a new player, I think you shouldn't skip over the section, because the things that comes with the background, the bonds, the ideal, the flaw, it's all great things to think about when creating a character, like pillars that makes a character, even though you of course doesn't have to pick the predetermined examples in the book.
right. And to harken back to that, uh, those are some very good examples of important things to keep in mind when making your character, like personality traits, flaws, goals, bonds, ideals. Like all of those things are things that can make a compelling character that drives the story forward. What are some other things, if any, that you think about when thinking about the backstory and personality of your character?
I think you brought up a very good line of thinking right now, Philip. I don't know if I think like that always when I make a character, but I like this phrase: "What has my character been through, and how does that affect them?" Or sometimes I guess you can play the reverse, like, "What haven't they been through? Like, have they lived a very protective, safe life, so they are naive or very overly trusting, for example?" And as I mentioned before, when I started out playing D&D, I looked on it way more as a board game than a role-playing game. Like the aspect of improv wasn't at all in my head, really. Maybe that had something to do with us starting in 4th edition, which was very board game-like. But I have tried with every character that I make to think more about who the person is in a realistic sense, that I should also be able to role play them. Like acting doesn't come natural to me, so I can't play a very complicated character. I think I have to have very clear guidelines to follow. So I usually take something very central about the person. Like, I have a tendency of playing lawful good characters because, well, I think they are not easy to play necessarily, but you have a very clear way of holding, if you want, like you do the lawful good thing. That can lead to complicated situations by itself, but
of course,
that is something that helps me when creating a character, to find like a central part of the character that I focus from and flesh it out from there.
Yeah. And it sounds a little bit like you're, or you can tell me if I'm wrong, but it strikes me a little bit as if you're kind of taking a little bit of who you are as a person and putting it into your character, perhaps, so you can latch onto it and more easily, put yourself in those shoes. Would you say that's?
Yeah, absolutely. Or it's also easy to do the opposite, making a character that I think is very, the opposite of who I think I am myself. That also makes it easy to roleplay. Like, why wouldn't I do this situation and do just that?
How about you, Philip? What kind of characters do you prefer to play roleplay wise, and how do you think about this?
I kind of want to try most, like different, just character concepts, like personality traits wise. So when I make a character, or the personality part and the background, I usually start with like session 1, first 15 minutes of playing. How do I want to play the character? Like, do I want them to be jovial? Do I want them to be rough? Do I want them to be funny, or like stern and boring? And then I kind of work my way backwards in how they would have ended up that way, and go with that path. Like, some people might want to play the
the young boy that left his town to be a hero, and he encounters some other things on the way, and then the blah, 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 blah. And then finally, here we are at the tavern where we all meet. But I prefer to go the other way around, to have the backstory explain the character I want to play.
I really like that approach. Personally, it feels like the personality of the character becomes very natural. Like it becomes a natural progression of who they are and what they've been through. And I don't know, but your experience in acting might be beneficial to you in this way, like in putting yourself in a character's shoes and thinking about it in that sense.
Yeah.
But I think that's a great point, trying to work yourself backwards instead of forwards. When it comes to your characters, when you make them, you make a plethora of choices. You choose class and race and ability scores and whatnot. How much do you connect these to the kind of person that you want to role play? How much do you think about, for instance, your choice of spells in terms of role playing value and how they make sense for your character? Do you not care? Do you go for mechanics, or do you think about it from a role play perspective?
Yeah, I think I do pick them quite a bit from the role playing perspective, as you say. Like I might have an idea of what my character wants to accomplish, as like in a broad sense, like what is it that they want to do out on the adventure, and then like get the stuff. Like I prefer to look at spells specifically, not as much as like you have a list of these are the things I can learn as I become more powerful, or the skills or whatever. But it's rather that these are the things they are self-taught. Like these are the things my character wants to be able to do, so they learned how to do it. Like these specific things. So I think that's a really important point of the character progression.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Philip. I really like having the mechanic parts of the game being closely intertwined with the role playing. Like I wouldn't play a very what do you call it, altruistic character who wants everyone and everything to live and prosper and then throw out fireballs to the left and right. Like that doesn't make like any coherent sense with the character, for example. Just as I wouldn't play maybe an evil character who only has supportive healing spells, perhaps. Maybe you can make that work, but I kind of like to have the mechanics represent the character that I want to play, and like you say, either that the character has worked hard to get these abilities or somehow put the effort into it, or that they have had them thrust upon them without any choice. Like a sorcerer or a warlock perhaps didn't choose to get their abilities, and how you can roleplay from that instead. It's kind of similar thoughts, but the opposite.
Yeah, there can
scenario.
be a really interesting contrast on being like a warlock, or like a warlock that has a lot of like killing and the weird mystical dark arts and just lots of damage, and you're a really kind soul, but you're kind of corrupted by your patron to do all these nasty deeds.
Exactly. Now, it was a bit of a leading question because, of course, I do enjoy when mechanics are closely intertwined with role play as well, and I think there's plenty of opportunity for that in D&D, even if it's just like my character happens to be proficient in insight. Why are they proficient in insight? What have they been doing with their life to lead them to that point? And that gets back to what you were saying, Philip, like tracing it backwards and being like, okay, so they would have had to either have interacted with a lot of people to get a lot of experience, or have some sort of other ability that allows them to read people. And think backwards and think about what they've been through and what they've learned and who they've learned it from. based on the choices that you make. I think that is one way to do it, and you could also, of course, say that first you decide that you want to play an ex-soldier, and then you pick your skills that you think match that background. So you could do it either way, but I think it's interesting to tie them together, because that means that they become that much more interesting when you discuss them and when they come up in play. Like, it's more interesting to talk about you being able to play the harp if it's not just a random thing, but instead it's something that was kind of integral to your backstory in some way.
Absolutely. And those choices with your backstory, like if you have a more clear thought behind them when you choose them, so to speak, that it can also affect like the moment-to-moment role playing. I think specifically of the like spells, once again, the like if you know arcane missiles, for example. I know it's an example in Tasha's Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, the farmer wizard who shoots arcane chickens or hens instead of missiles, kind of to just flavor-wise affect your moment-to-moment roleplay as well.
Definitely, and the same is even true for non-spellcasters. I feel like there's plenty of opportunity for a fighter to weave in potentially like their fighting style into their backstory.
Absolutely.
Like, who taught them how to fight, and why do they fight the way they do? What kind of like stances, what kind of methods? Are they very basic and methodical, or are they like dancing around on the battlefield? It makes for a very different vibe, even though both of them are doing multi-attacks and slicing people up.
Indeed.
Yeah. No, that's great. I think we agree on that mechanics and story are best combined. Something that I was thinking about, we've talked a large bit about how we think when we make our own characters, our individual characters, but D&D is more often than not a party game, like a game for a group. And the party as an entity is as important as any individual character when you're playing D&D. Like, the cohesion of your party will kind of make or break your game, or the interactions you have within the party will decide where the game goes. So something that I thought about when in terms of backstory was the concept of having bonds with other players from the get-go. What are your feelings on that? Do you like having characters know each other from beforehand, or do you like the aspect of not knowing how they will end up in terms of their relationships?
I like the idea. The current character I'm playing started out as closely not related, but had a friendship with another player character, and that was a fun way to really feel like you care about the other character. Of course, you care about your whole party, but maybe if you would have to make a very difficult choice between who to save, this person that you've known for several years or another person in your party, that could be interesting, so to speak. So I really like that idea as a player, and I like it a lot as a dungeon master, because I think the more your party characters not necessarily knows about each other, but the connections they have really helps to get the feeling for the party to kind of wanting to work together and having a reason to be together. And with the concept of a session zero, where you meet up for a session before starting the campaign, I think it's a good idea to share a bit of your characters. Not everything, you absolutely don't have to put all the cards on the table, but to share bits and pieces so you can find connections. Like, my old mentor was this person. I also had an old mentor. Maybe we had the same mentor, or they were related. To find like interactions between your characters, I think makes it more fun during play.
Yeah, I agree. And it feels like it can make the game feel less like, oh, now we are on the side story of character X. Mm-hmm. Now we are on the side story of character Y, and more like it can come together in a more organic way, I suppose. And the characters, when the characters feel more invested, I think the players feel more invested, and the more feelings we feel or experience when we play, the more, at least I enjoy the game. I enjoy it to get those highs and sometimes those lows as well.
Absolutely.
And the session 0 is something that I wanted to bring this into, because recently the book Tasha's Cauldron of Everything released, and it brought with it the idea of group patrons. It has been a part of D&D forever. It's mentioned in the Dungeon Master's Guide and in other books as well, but they fleshed it out and gave some examples in Tasha's. And I've been kind of more and more into the idea of having a common patron of some kind to bring cohesion to the party. Even if they don't, as you say, even if they don't know each other, having them start out working for the same person from the get-go kind of makes you not have to suspend your disbelief that they would stick together, which sometimes can happen early on in a campaign otherwise. How do you guys feel about the group perhaps being a collection of experts in different fields gathered together by this professor at an academy in order to send them off on this expedition?
Yeah, I agree with you that I think it's a good idea to have a group patron, because it gives such a clear common goal, at least short term, and even also when you should always remember that, like, later in the campaign, the earlier levels are now your backstory. So
Right.
if the first levels are really integral for everyone, like it's important for everyone and they care about what happened, then you can build on to that and use that experience to create new different adventures and the connections between the characters.
Absolutely. Like, your character at level 20 shouldn't be the same person as on level 1, I guess. You should evolve and learn during your leveling up and adventuring days, right?
Yeah, I think that's a real nugget of wisdom there, Philip. That as you level up, your lower levels are now your backstory.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that sometimes it's easy, for me at least, to forget thinking about it like that. The character has been through events that are probably more dangerous than most of the things they've experienced previously in their life, and it's bound to affect them somehow. But yeah. So if you had to choose one thing that is like the most important to think about when making a character in terms of backstory or personality, what would it be? Would it be like having a flaw? Would it be having a clear goal? What is like the most important, if such a thing can be said to exist?
I think for me it's, and I think this is said in the player's handbook as well maybe, but why is your character an adventurer? Like, why are they not your everyday Joe? Why do they strive to accomplish something that is extraordinary to the rest of the people in this universe? I think that motivation really needs to be there to kind of fuel your character's reason and wanting to be part of the party that you're experience these things with.
Yeah, and I agree completely. The why is not the X, but the why is really important. Being able to, like, in most situations, if someone would stop you and then ask you why is your character doing this, you should probably have an answer, or you should come up with one for it, and then that's the most important part. Having the reason for it. If it's so is just, I want money.
Yeah.
This will give me money.
Exactly, and it as a this just as gaining your abilities doesn't have to be voluntary as well, right? Why are you doing this? I was kidnapped and sold as a slave. It wasn't really my choice, but I have a reason to try to find my way back home, kind of. Or it can be that you have sworn vengeance upon your heart to find your little sister's brother's cousin's murderer.
Yeah, exactly. Classic D&D stuff. I think I agree with you on that. I think I would probably think of it as a goal, but it's kind of it doesn't have to be a clearly defined goal necessarily. Like the goal can just be to have adventures. Like this character is out to experience the world.
Why though?
But yeah,
The next question.
for fun. No, but like I just want them to have something that they are reaching for. And then, I mean, the why comes naturally, like kind of joined to that. So I think we're kind of on the same page there as well when it comes to creating the character and having them make sense as a player character in a game.
Yeah, and I think this is a really important part of your character creation, to talk with your dungeon master about what your campaign is going to revolve around. Because if your why is 100 miles away from the place where the campaign will take place, it might be difficult to get that satisfaction. Kind of maybe you can find a workaround and let your DM include that for you as well. But I think you need to at least inform your DM of your character's goals.
Yeah, and that is also a good part of a session 0 to discuss that kind of thing. And I mean, as a DM, I love when people do that, when they explain kind of what their characters or why their characters are where they are and what they're doing. And I also love when that slowly changes over the campaign. So I think one thing that I would recommend for people is to not feel constrained by their backstory and the personality that you've chosen for a character at the very get-go. Like it's less important to be fully consistent with your character to the point like that a real person would be, and more important for you to enjoy the game. And then you can kind of, make it make sense, if you will. But as long as you have a clear why, like why you're out there adventuring, like you say, Martin, I think you can still have it feel dynamic and feel like it makes sense to an extent.
Absolutely, and that why might change like completely.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there are many things that could be said about this, and we've said plenty already. It's kind of a how should you put it? It's an abstract subject, I feel, because it's so, again, individual. It's what makes our characters our own, and the way we think about it is often a little bit different. But it's been very interesting to hear your takes on it, and I've definitely picked up some tips of how to think about it when I make my next character.
Same here.
Yeah, and with that, I think that we're going to close down this discussion. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you like what you saw, feel free to subscribe, like, and comment down below and tell us why we are wrong about what we think about what you think. Or if you agree with us and find our opinions appealing, feel free to leave that comment as well. Thank you guys for joining me, and I'll see you soon.
See ya.
Yeah.